This man was shot in the skull, and the face, and the stomach, and the ankle, the hip, the leg, and the ear. He lost an eye. He lost a hand. He survived a plane crash into the sea. He escaped a prisoner of war camp by digging a tunnel with his one good hand. And after 5 decades of it, after 2 world wars and more wounds than most men have birthdays, he sat down to write his memoirs. He summed the whole thing up in one sentence. Frankly, he wrote, I had enjoyed the war. His name was Adrian Carton de Wiart, and he may be the hardest man who ever lived. Almost nobody knows what he did to his own hand. It is the part of this story you will not forget. He was born in 1880 into a wealthy aristocratic family, raised for a comfortable life of privilege. He wanted none of it. When the Boer War broke out in South Africa, he was a student at Oxford. So he walked out, lied about his age and his name, and enlisted as a common trooper under a fake identity. He was shot almost immediately. In the stomach and the groin, he was sent home to recover, and his outraged father discovered the truth. Adrian didn't care. He had found the only thing he ever really wanted to do. He wanted to be a soldier, and war, it turned out, could not kill him no matter how hard it tried. By 1914, he was fighting in British Somaliland in East Africa. And there, storming an enemy fort, he was shot in the face. The bullet took his left eye. Another took part of his ear. The doctors fitted him with a glass eye. He wore it out of the hospital, climbed into a taxi, decided he hated it, and threw it straight out of the window. For the rest of his life, he wore a black eye patch instead. It became his trademark. For that action in Somaliland, they gave him his first medal. He had lost an eye, and he considered it a fair trade. Then came the Western Front, the trenches of the First World War, and this is where the list of his wounds becomes almost impossible to believe. Over the next 4 years, he was shot through the skull, through the hip, through the leg, through the ankle, through the ear again. At Ypres, his left hand was mangled by shellfire. The doctor took one look and refused to amputate the ruined hanging fingers, so Carton de Wiart pulled them off himself. The ones that wouldn't come, he bit off. Then he had the rest of the hand removed, and he went back to the front. He would later say the war years were a beastly experience. He also could not wait to get back to them. In 1916, at the Battle of the Somme, in the bloodiest fighting the British Army had ever known, 3 of the 4 battalion commanders around him were killed. So Carton de Wiart, one-eyed, one-handed, took command of all of them. He pulled the shattered units together and held the line under a storm of fire, walking the trenches, pulling pins from grenades with his teeth and throwing them one-handed. For that day, he was awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest honor for valor in the British military. His citation said he had inspired everyone around him. What it did not say was that he was barely holding himself together with bandages. You would think that would be enough for one lifetime. It was only half-time. By the time the Second World War came, he was nearly 60. One eye, one hand, a body held together by scar tissue. They sent him anyway, first to Poland, dropped into the path of the Nazi blitzkrieg as it tore the country to pieces. He slipped out through Romania with the world collapsing behind him. Then, in 1941, it happened again. His plane's engines died over the Mediterranean. It went down into the sea, off the coast of Libya. He was 61 years old. He had one eye and one hand. The shore was a mile away. He swam it, and when he finally dragged himself up onto the beach, half drowned, the Italians were standing there waiting to take him prisoner. They locked him in a fortified castle and assumed a one-eyed, one-handed old man would sit quietly and wait out the war. They were wrong. He tried to escape 5 times. Once, he and a handful of others spent 7 months digging a tunnel by hand. He was in his 60s. He had one hand. He dug anyway. He got out and stayed out for 8 days, walking across the Italian countryside disguised as a peasant. He did not speak a single word of Italian. They caught him. Of course they caught him, but by now the Italians had begun to suspect this strange, unkillable old soldier might be worth more to them free. So they let him go to help broker Italy's surrender. He walked out of a prison camp and straight back into the war. Churchill was not finished with him either. He sent him to China as his personal envoy to Chiang Kai-shek. Carton de Wiart went, broke his back in a fall along the way, and simply carried on. And at last, it was over. All of it. So he went home, sat down, and wrote his memoirs. He looked back on 50 years of being shot, shelled, burned, drowned, and imprisoned. He picked up his pen, and he wrote one sentence that said everything. Frankly, he wrote, I had enjoyed the war. Adrian Carton de Wiart died in 1963. He was 83. He went peacefully in his bed. 2 world wars put a bullet through his skull, took his eye, took his hand, and hurled everything they had at him for half a century. None of it was ever enough. In the end, the only thing that could bring down Adrian Carton de Wiart was old age.